You're pitiful, just a dropout kid from the lowest rung. I bet you were raised in poverty and your kid is living at the bottom of society. I understand your perspective. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mary. My life has been a roller coaster, to say the least. When I was about to finish middle school, tragedy struck. I lost both my parents in a short span of time. Coping with such loss, my focus shattered, and I couldn't muster the will to study for exams anymore. Predictably, I failed all my high school entrance exams, even the backups. At 15, I found myself at a crossroads, gap year or workforce. To be honest, I did have aspirations of attending high school, but the family members who took me in were financially strained. Moreover, I felt compelled to preserve my parents' life insurance payout for future needs. Add to that the discomfort of entering high school a year late, and the decision to start working seemed the most practical. I must have been 19 then, in a relationship with John, a colleague at my workplace who was 27 at the time. You're involved with someone much older? Are you sure about this? A man pursuing a 19-year-old, can he truly be responsible? My aunt, a relative, expressed her concern, but youthful and headstrong, I disregarded her advice. John is wonderful. Sure, there's an age gap, but 8 years isn't uncommon, right? Well, if it were 25 and 33, perhaps, but 19 and 27 is quite a difference. What's the difference? Quit talking down about him. With that sentiment in mind, we tied the knot when I turned 20. A few months later, I discovered I was pregnant. Initially, I was overjoyed, but it was short-lived. When I broke the news to John, his response shattered me. What? You're planning to keep it? Seriously? No chance. I can't handle having a child with a dropout. Why should I be burdened with raising a kid who'll end up like you? Why would you say such hurtful things? You knew about my dropout status before we got married, didn't you? Yeah, I suppose, but no, it won't work out. I mean, having a child with a dropout, the child will turn out odd, right? I don't want to raise a kid like that. I also want more freedom. John's words stung, and soon he began avoiding me both at home and at work, pressing for a divorce. Over time, my feelings for him waned and I eventually consented to the split. However, my job at the time, within a small company, lacked any provision for maternity or paternity leave, leaving me no option but to resign concurrently with the divorce. With the support of my relatives and what remained of my parents' life insurance, I safely delivered my son Jacob, pouring all my love into raising him. Despite the financial strain, I remained healthy after childbirth, juggling multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. By the time Jacob entered elementary school, I secured a full-time position, granting both financial stability and emotional bandwidth. Now, 2 decades have elapsed since those trying times. These days, Jacob and I even indulge in leisurely outings together. Hey, are you perhaps married? Suddenly, a familiar voice pierced through the air, a voice I had hoped to erase from memory. It belonged to John, my ex-husband, the man who deserted me during my pregnancy 2 decades ago. I thought it might be you, Mary. So what brings you to a department store on your day off? Seems a bit upscale for you, John remarked, a smirk playing on his lips. Jacob, likely bewildered by the unexpected encounter, stood quietly, his expression troubled. I figured he might be your new beau, but he looks rather young, doesn't he? Ah, is this the kid from all those years ago? Ah, it's a boy. Well, it's none of my concern anyway, John continued. Indeed, you and I have long parted ways, John. Why are you even speaking to me? Don't be so bitter, Mary. Remember, we used to be deeply in love. Seems like you've turned into quite the cold-hearted woman, haven't you? John's grin held a hint of mockery, as if the past held no significance to him. Then, he uttered something utterly audacious. By the way, is he also a dropout? What? What are you implying? I retorted, taken aback by his insensitivity. Well, I mean, like mother, like son, right? If you dropped out, it's only logical that he would too, isn't it? John's words dripped with disdain. Enough. Stop with your hurtful comments, I snapped, unable to tolerate his callousness any longer. Ah, but he's got my genes, so he must have at least graduated high school, right? Although, today's world, even with a diploma, you're still scraping the bottom of the barrel, John boasted, dropping the name of a renowned multinational corporation, the kind often plastered across TV screens. Surely, you've heard of this company, Mary. I'm a department head in a major corporation now. I guess you could say I'm part of the elite. he declared. And what would the elite want with someone like me? Are you daft? Do you honestly think I have any interest in someone as ignorant and destitute as you? I only spoke to you out of nostalgia. Frankly, you're nothing but a bother, I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Don't say that, John protested weakly. That's why you'll never achieve anything significant. Ever since you entered my life, my fortunes have changed for the better. I was recruited by a prestigious corporation, and my career has been skyrocketing ever since. Life is certainly smoother without someone like you bringing bad luck. So, I'm a bad omen to you, John. If that's the case, perhaps it's best if you refrain from contacting me altogether. No, sometimes I'd just like to glance at the bottom of the barrel to remind myself of how fortunate I am. You see, in my workplace, there's no one quite like you, not even among the lowest ranked employees. But it's true what they say about poverty. It's like a vortex, pulling you down no matter what. Is that all you wanted to say? We're pressed for time, I interjected, urging John to get to the point. Just a moment, let me have a word with my son, John replied casually, placing a hand on Jacob's shoulder with a self-satisfied grin. Then, with a smile still lingering on his face, he addressed Jacob. Life may be tough for you too, but it is what it is. Blame your mother for her poverty and lack of education. If you're looking for someone to resent, point it towards her for having you straight out of middle school. John's expression radiated satisfaction as he glanced around. John, what's taking so long? The restroom was crowded, I inquired, wondering why he was lingering. Oh, I just bumped into someone from the past, John replied casually, as if nothing significant had occurred. At that moment, his wife or girlfriend joined him, a striking woman who seemed intimately connected to John. Can you believe it? This woman dropped out of high school midway through. Not even a high school graduate, but a middle school dropout. Can you imagine? John boasted, his tone dripping with condescension. And her son is likely to follow suit, destined for the bottom rung of society. Aren't you glad you didn't have to endure such a dismal existence? You're fortunate to have landed a high achiever like me, he continued, oblivious to our presence as if we were invisible. However, the woman seemed to take notice of Jacob when he lifted his head. Peering up from her books, her expression turned startled. She pointed at him, her hand trembling uncontrollably. Isn't he? What's the matter? I asked, perplexed by her sudden reaction. Isn't that the president of one of our major clients? She exclaimed. Startled by her outburst, John pivoted around. The moment his gaze landed on Jacob's face, his eyes widened in recognition. Seeing this reaction, Jacob slowly spoke up. I heard your company's name earlier, but upon seeing your face, I suspected it might be you. Indeed, you are the one. Thank you for your hospitality at that dinner the other day. Oh, that. Mr. Jacob, you seemed quite reserved during our dinner. It's quite surprising to witness you publicly criticizing others, labeling them as low-life and uneducated at your whim. Quite impolite of you, isn't it? The woman Lily remarked with a touch of reproach. No, that's... Lily, why didn't you inform me? John interjected, his tone tinged with frustration. I couldn't get a good look at him. Plus, I work in a different department. I can't possibly remember all the clients' faces, Lily defended herself, her voice tinged with apprehension. Useless. What did you just say? John snapped, the tension between him and Lily escalating rapidly. However, Jacob remained unfazed by their argument and spoke up calmly. Well, I'm not particularly interested in your quarrel. I now have a clearer understanding of the director's usual approach. We were in talks about implementing our system in your company, but let's abandon that idea. No, please wait, this is all just a misunderstanding, Jacob interjected, his voice tinged with urgency. Misunderstanding? How is it a misunderstanding when you publicly insulted me? John retorted, his tone laced with indignation. Well, you see, Jacob faltered, struggling to find the right words to explain himself. Mary, this is your fault, John interjected suddenly, redirecting the blame. What? How is this my fault? Mary questioned, bewildered by John's accusation. Because, why on earth would someone like you, a high school dropout, be with Mr. Jacob? Do you even realize who he is? He founded a business while still in college and holds numerous patents. The system he developed is so advanced that major companies are vying to adopt it, John explained, his voice dripping with condescension. Is that so? And why are you with him when you didn't even know that? Mary countered, her tone tinged with skepticism. I'm not quite sure. I don't typically discuss work matters with my son, John replied. He said that. Your son? Mary echoed, her tone reflecting surprise. Yes, that's correct. Pleased to make your acquaintance. I am Jacob, the prodigy, son of the high school dropout. Jacob interjected confidently. Well, that's, John stammered, caught off guard by Jacob's assertion. It seems you have something on your mind regarding my mother. Please feel free to express yourself. We likely won't have another chance to converse, Jacob encouraged, his tone composed. Oh, well, what's the situation here? How come someone like you? Why is someone like Jacob's mother, a high school dropout? John stumbled over his words, struggling to articulate his thoughts. John faltered, taken aback by Jacob's unexpected interjection. He appeared torn, as if he wanted to retort but found himself at a loss for words. His gaze shifted uneasily between Mary and Jacob. From my earliest memories, my mother instilled in me a wealth of knowledge. Despite her lack of formal education beyond middle school, she delved into countless books and shared their wisdom with me, Jacob continued, his voice steady and composed. Ha! What? I never knew Mary possessed such depth, John muttered, visibly surprised. But there was one subject my mother remained silent on, the criticisms of my father, who abandoned us during her pregnancy. I've harbored resentment towards my father for as long as I can remember, but my mother always insisted it was her own naivety that led to our struggles. Even in our most dire circumstances, when we had nothing and were barely scraping by, she maintained a radiant smile. She's the person I admire most, Jacob recounted, his voice tinged with reverence. So you hold her in high regard, but Mr. Jacob, you share my bloodline, don't you? Can't you consider signing a contract with my company? John pressed, his tone pleading. Yes, I could. However, what's truly unacceptable here is your behavior. We're in a public setting, you know. Have you not considered the embarrassment you're causing? Jacob countered, his tone firm. Well, that's just my honest opinion. I simply perceive Mary as lacking in intelligence, that's all, John retorted, his tone unapologetic. And what does that make you, the man who fathered a child with this woman you call stupid? What kind of person does that make you, abandoning her when she was so young? Maybe she was innocent, but do you have any idea of the hardships she endured? You seem proud of your position in a big company, but why didn't you contribute even a single cent in child support? Jacob's accusations hung heavy in the air, leaving John speechless. As Jacob's words sank in, Lily's expression transformed. From a troubled look, her face now bore a glare directed squarely at John. Wait a minute, that's not what you told me. No, you just be quiet. That can't be true. Didn't you share with me that your previous wife cheated on you and left, that she denied you access to your child, and even refused your attempts to provide child support, forcing you to save instead? Was that entire story just a fabrication? Lily's voice was edged with disbelief and accusation. It seems highly likely that it was a fabrication. My mother and I still reside with our relatives. He knows where we are if he truly intended to provide child support. Mom, has this man ever attempted to contact you? Jacob inquired. Not once. Not on my cell phone. Not at any relative's house. And certainly, there's been no mention of child support, Mary confirmed, her tone tinged with disappointment. My revelation seemed to ignite fury in Lily, while John's complexion drained of color. You lied. You're despicable. I'm relieved I didn't marry you. It's over between us, Lily declared, her voice trembling with anger. What? Wait, Lily, please don't go, John pleaded, desperation evident in his tone. John hastily pursued Lily, leaving Jacob and me to exchange a knowing glance before erupting into laughter. John's pitiful demeanor was simply too amusing to ignore. Afterward, we indulged in some window shopping, feeling thoroughly content as we headed home. Later, Jacob filled me in on the situation. His company and John's were on the verge of sealing a significant contract, but Jacob opted to pull out at the 11th hour. Apparently, he was entirely transparent about his reasons. Your representative was my father, the man who abandoned my pregnant mother and neglected to provide child support. It's inconceivable to trust such an individual and engage in business with him. The system I've developed is akin to my own offspring. Entrusting it to him, just the thought makes my skin crawl. Predictably, this turn of events stirred up considerable turmoil. Allegedly, the company penalized John by demoting him and sidelining his role. It appears they're hoping to coax Jacob into reconsidering the contracts by making an example of John. From Jacob's perspective, it seems he might entertain the idea if they slash John's bonus. Undoubtedly, John is about to face some challenging times, but perhaps it's what he deserves, isn't it? At 48, he only has to weather another 12 years until retirement. My mom endured much harsher circumstances for far longer. When you put it into perspective, this isn't all that tough. Jacob's expression was one of genuine anger as he voiced these sentiments. I empathize with his emotions, so I have no intention of intervening. In his desperation, John has sought refuge at our relative's home. With a deep bow at the entrance, he pleads desperately. I'm deeply sorry for what I did in the past. I lied about providing child support, but I do have savings now. I'm willing to offer Jacob the equivalent of child support as a gift while I'm alive. I'll even compensate Mary if necessary. Please reconsider, John implored. However, Jacob refused to entertain such propositions. Turning to John, he stated firmly, I have no interest in your savings now. Our hardships belong to the past. You didn't support us then, and now you only seek to save yourself. That's unacceptable. I apologize. I was young and foolish. Please forgive me, John pleaded, his voice tinged with remorse. Those who genuinely regret their actions wouldn't dangle compensation as a bargaining chip. Your selfishness knows no bounds. Please leave. If you return to this house, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities. Wouldn't that further jeopardize your position at the company? Jacob's words struck a chord, prompting John to flee in a panicked frenzy. Thanks to Jacob's intervention, it's unlikely John will darken our doorstep again. We can look forward to peaceful days ahead. Currently, Jacob is focused on completing all his college credits. But once that's accomplished, he plans to treat the entire family to a trip to a hot springs resort. Despite my protests, Jacob insists on repaying our support. If that's his wish, we'll gratefully accept his generosity. Surely, we'll enjoy a wonderful time on that trip.